that being the case, I really appreciate you taking the time to come and sit with me, and I have to apologize that the other two panelists, for whatever reason, no showed. But since you are Mr. Busting Brackets, I don't think we lost a step. I appreciate you. I really appreciate your coming aboard. I appreciate you sharing your expertise with us because you're one of the best in the country, and everybody knows that. And I thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. I
Thank you.
I thank you
Appreciate
very much. Okay, ciao. Okay, welcome. This is Jim Harvey, Blue Notes Basketball. Welcome to the 2024-25 Big East Basketball Preview. And I'm here today with Busting Brackets, the man, Mr. Tristan Freeman, editor of Busting Brackets. And Tristan, welcome. We appreciate you coming by. Talk about the Big East today.
Yeah, absolutely. As a Pitt guy, I'm always going to have love for the Big East, so always a good time talking about it.
All right, all right. Well, without any further ado, let's keep this brief if we can and get right to it. Analysis of the power rankings of Big East. I picked up on three of them. Bart Torvik's T rank, and he put numbers next to his. Back in May 24th, or correction, May 28th, the 247 had um, their breakout of the Big East predictions. And of course, busting brackets on 8 May. You guys came up with yours. Uh, how do you see the Big East finishing up? What's the order? Who's the big dog?
Yeah, so starting off, I think there's no other team you can put at number one than the two-time defending champs, UConn. They lost a lot, but they kept the most important person. That's the coach Dan Hurley, even though he could have gone to the Lakers or to Kentucky. So having him back is big. Alex Caravan's going to be primed for a national breakout
Yes, he
start
is.
him as a junior. He's now the focal point, and there's his game, I think, is built to be an 18 to 20 point per game score. And then, returning to Son Diar is underrated move because he's a veteran guy, knows the offense. He's a capable starting point guard, and you should trust him. It's going to come down to besides 5-star Liam McNeely, the two high profile transfers, Aiden Mahaney, who's a star at St. Mary's.
Haney is the dog.
He played at the slowest system in the country and still averaged 14 a game. So
Yeah,
now that he's going to be able to play at a faster pace, who knows? And then Taurus Reed, who's a starting center in Michigan, really good offensive player. He's someone that we're a little refined and could be very good, but you also don't need him to be a star because Samson Johnson was one of the best backup bigs in the country last year, and he's more than capable of playing 20 minutes himself. So I think UConn deserved to deserve the number one spot. I think the real debate is who should be the team that's their biggest threat.
well, say again.
I said the real debate isn't UConn one, but who should be the biggest threat at 2, 3.
Yes, yes, sir, yes, sir. And who might that be?
Uh, I've been going back and forth for Creighton and Xavier. I
Yeah,
I think talent, I trust Xavier more, but because of health concerns, because I kind of need to see what happens with Zach Fremantle and Jerome Hunter when they come back for
yeah,
Xavier, I'm going to give Creighton the edge, even though they
yeah.
lost Trey Alexander and Baylor Shireman, probably two of the five best players in the conference last year. They bring back Ryan Kalkbrenner, multiple defensive player of the year. He's a guy that averages 18-8 for them, one of the best two-way players in the country. He's back. Stephen Ashworth, after a slow start, really looked like the guy that came over from Utah State the second half. And I think in a full year in the system, he's going to be primed for a big
Yeah.
year. It's going to come down to the two transfers. You bring in Jemiah Neal, who's a starter at Arizona State,
Arizona
a
State.
solid guy, solid capable wing, and then Pop Isaacs. He's a guy that can go for 20 plus any night. The
Yeah.
concern is that he's not efficient. If he shoots 35% from the field again, that's going to be a problem because Alexander and Shireman were much more efficient overall. But again, Isaacs can create for himself, and that's going to be big
Yeah.
because he can break down any kind of defense.
Well, and he's healthy.
Yes.
McDermott says he's healthy and he's starting to get involved and on the floor stuff with the team. Isaacs played hurt all last year at Texas Tech. So, and he still had 15.8. So, if he's healthy and he doesn't have to be the focal point, that I look for him to have a much better season. Xavier, Xavier, talk to me a little bit more about Xavier.
Yeah, so they had a down year by their standards with
Yeah,
Sean Miller. They do lose Desmond Claude, who was a
yeah,
star of the team. He's now USC, but they bring back Davion McKnight, who was a really solid player for them. And then their transfer class was loaded. I mean, Dante Maddox averaged 15 a game at Toledo. Roddy Anderson was a starter at Boise State. Ryan Conwell is a premier shooter. And then Cameron Fletcher, who was a guy who was hurt at Florida State, but is a really good combo defensive kind of wing for them. And then you bring in John Hughley, who was a star pick, goes to Oklahoma, didn't get a ton of minutes, but if nothing else, he's just a really good backup big man that can give you 10 points off the bench
yeah,
and be a big problem for opposing backup bigs. If Fremantle, who was an all-conference player when healthy for Xavier, if
yeah,
he's 100% and Jerome Hunter can give them depth as well, they're probably the deepest team in the Big East. And they may
yeah,
ultimately be the best team, but between their concerns and the respect you have to give the UConn, you can't
yeah,
make number one. But if you just focus solely on paper and assumed everyone was healthy and ignored the past titles UConn won, it's hard to say that there's a better roster top to bottom than Xavier, who has a quality head coach that you trust in
exactly.
Sean.
Exactly. And for my money, Conway, the kid from Indiana State, Conwell, yeah, he's 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 hell on wheels. The boy is hell on wheels. I think that he may well be the difference maker for Xavier in challenging UConn this year because they've got all the front court pieces in the world, but they even with Claude they were somewhat suspect in the background in the backcourt. So with this Conwell guy, this guy is the lights out kind of guy. He's a Creighton kind of shooter, you know. This guy he can make a world of difference in that Xavier system. Going down the line, who's 3, 4, 5, and 6?
Yeah, so I do have Xavier 3, 4 Marquette, who I think is top 25 caliber. No Kyler Kolek, the Big East Player of the Year. No Oso Ighodaro. But you bring back Cam Jones, who, when healthy, is one of the best scorers in the country. When
Yeah,
Kolek was out, he was averaging over 20 a game. Like there's a
yeah,
chance that Jones might lead the nation in scoring now that Zach Edey is gone. So he's going to be the guy to watch. David Joplin, who
yeah,
didn't
yeah,
take a made as big a step as I think some people would have thought. His percentages went down, but he's still capable combo forward. And then you have veterans Stevie Mitchell,
yeah,
Sean Jones, Ben Gold, Chase Ross.
yeah.
Shaka Smart has earned the benefit of the doubt that the returning role players are going to be able to elevate
Well,
and indicate starters.
yeah, that's old school.
Yeah.
That's old
Yeah,
school.
no,
Yeah,
yeah, no
because they,
transfers, but it's simple development and it's
yeah,
work. And I think there's
yeah.
no reason why not to think that the next group can't do it.
And this 2 years in a row, no transfers.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Who's up next?
Five, I got St. John's. I think obviously Rick Pitino. I wasn't sold on last year's roster because I thought there was too many mid-major guys that had
Mm,
to move up to the Big East, and
yeah,
Dennis Jenkins was able to do it, but there's some of the other guys, including Jordan Dingle and Chris Letlam, wasn't able to do it. I think now you have proven power conference stars. Obviously, you can't get more proven than Kadari Richmond, who was one of the top stars in the Big East at Seton Hall.
yeah,
Davion Smith, who was a triple-double machine himself over at Utah. I do wonder how those two will fit. Obviously, they both can play on and off the ball, but at the same
yeah,
time, they both were ball dominant. Aaron Scott, the transfer from North Texas, is a quality shooter. RJ Louise, I think, is going to be is going to have a big second year in the program. I think the big question is going to be how the front court works out, because you don't have Soriano anymore. You bring in Vincent Iwachukwu, who's a former 5-star guy at USC. He had a heart condition which pretty much ended his freshman campaign. Didn't do too much last year, so it'll be
Yeah.
interesting to see if he can break out. And then Zuby Ejiofor, who's a former Kansas guy, the backup, if he can take a leap and the front court can give them something, then I think they can be top 25. Otherwise, you're hoping that Richmond and Smith does everything for the team. And that can have ups and downs.
Smith is Devon Smith.
Yes.
Yeah, I got big hopes for Devon Smith. He's on my list of impact transfers in the Big East. He's a hell of a player, Devon Smith. Yeah. Um. Oh, what about Glover, the freshman? No time on the court.
It's just hard in this era to know which freshmen, particularly at St. John's, like what are the guards? Because again, those two guys alone are going to control so much of the ball. I mean, they still have Simeon Wilcher, who's a former top 40 guy in UNC commit. He's someone that's supposed to get a lot of minutes as well. So it'll
Yeah.
be interesting to see what happens with those two. But I wouldn't be surprised if we see Smith and Richmond average 34, 35 minutes a game and lead
Yeah.
limited minutes for the other. So it's possible, but I just don't know what impact backup guards can do for St. John's, knowing how ball dominant those two are.
Yeah, and you got so many guys with big time major experience, and here comes a 5-star freshman, 4-star freshman, but he's still just a freshman, you know. Plus, I'm not that familiar with Patino's system and stuff like that, so I'm not sure uh, if his system would even begin to favor a freshman with significant minutes, you know. So I don't know. And what about Providence? Where's Providence?
Yeah, Providence is coming up at 6. I
Oh,
think
okay.
obviously, you don't have Devin Carter who broke out as the big star for them. That hurts, but and it's obviously a big asterisk. Assuming Bryce Hopkins can be 100% and return to fold, I think that's going to be big for them. Jake Pierre showed promise whenever Carter went down for them
Yeah.
towards the end of last season. I think he can be a lead guard. Miami transfer Bensley Joseph's going to be good. Chicago State transfer Wesley Cardez, a former top 100
Yeah.
guy, averaged 18 for them, and he was the guy that dropped 30 on Northwestern in the upset last year. So
Hmm.
he's a guy that's capable of playing big minutes for them. Look out for Chris Casonico, who's a transfer from St. Joseph's in the A10. He's a 7-foot, highly skilled big man that can shoot it from three. His
Hmm.
his his issues were more inconsistency. He's capable for going for 20, but he's also capable of giving you next to nothing. So I
Yeah.
am curious to see how he'll do in the Big East, which has a lot of quality defensive big men.
He's gonna split time with Raheem.
I think he'll. Well, I think Cardette and Raheem will split time in the backcourt. Those two, along with Joseph and Pierre, will make up the primary backcourt rotation.
What?
Inside, I
Yeah.
think I think Isan Nakobo will have to split minutes with Delorier, who I think redshirted for
Yeah,
them
that's my bad.
last
Raheem's
season.
a guard. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
and
my
then
bad.
and then assuming if Hopkins isn't ready to go, they might have to play some small ball because they're not too loaded up in when it comes to front court depth.
Okay. Um, Torvik broke the mold, and he took Nova and put Nova all the way up in 6th. Bart Torvik did on his T rank. Everybody else has got Nova 9th or 10th. What where what do you think?
Yeah, I had them in that range too, but I moved them up because they made a couple of late moves. I mean,
Ah,
adding Wooden Poplar, the transfer from Miami, who's a starting wing, a 3-point shooter, that was big. Keeping Eric Dixon for another year. He's one of the best
yeah,
players in the league. And then
yeah,
Boyake is a former top 25 guy. He didn't show much at ASU and was a role player for Fresno State, but if nothing else, he's a big body that can give them minutes at the five. We'll see what Jameer Brickis, a transfer from LaSalle, does, and Tyler Perkins, who was a freshman star at Penn. There's pieces there. There's not
Yeah.
a ton of depth in my eyes, and I think Kyle Neptune doesn't have the benefit of the doubt. So you're not going to put him ahead of Rick Pitino, Sean Miller, and others. But there's some things to like about this roster. And I do think there's some potential for Villanova. That's why I have them at 7. But would I be
Oh,
shocked
okay.
if they dropped a couple of spots?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. So you moved them up quite a bit. Yeah, you moved them up quite a bit. Um,
Yeah.
Seton Hall won the NIT, but lost Richmond to St. John's. So most people have got them what, eighth? Yeah,
Yeah.
practically everyone has them eighth or ninth.
Yeah. I had them 8th. They lost. They at one point did lose everyone because Dylan Adewusu also hit the portal, but he
Yeah,
elected to come back and he's going to be a feature piece for them. They have a lot of pieces that have high ceilings but also low floors. Zion
yeah,
Harmon's a former top 50 prospect who ended up at Bethune-Cookman because
yeah.
of off the court uh, things he dealt with, but he was solid there. We'll see if he's capable of being a Big East point guard. Manuel Corafor, who's a former guy at Louisville who showed potential there, but was in a crowded situation. Scotty Milton's a top 50 guy from Ohio State who I think could be a breakout star for them if he shows his potential that he showed flashes at the Buckeyes. Then I think he could end up being their best player. But I think
Gus
the concern,
Gus
yeah,
Yalden? Gus Yalden?
um, I mean, he comes from Wisconsin. They had a crowded front court. It's
Yeah,
possible. I think the reason why people won't put Seton Hall roster in the bottom, even though there's not much proven production, is there's potential. And,
it's
Seton Holloway has been able to make gritty rosters work. And I
yeah,
think this roster could be it. He just has to find a breakout guy somewhere. I think the odds are good that he'll find at least one of them. But
yeah,
if not, this team could this they could be one of the bottom 3 teams because
yeah,
again, there's not much proven. Like Adewusu was probably the most proven guy, and that's not a great thing to say on paper, considering what
yeah,
you lost.
yeah. Okay. What about Butler?
Yeah, they had 4 guys, and 2 of them were gone. Posh Alexander was a big loss for them, probably the biggest loss because they really didn't replace them. Kobe King was a transfer from Tulane, but he's more of a combo off guard. He's not really a point guard. So
Yeah,
there's a possibility that Jamil Telford could be their de facto point and sort of run the offense through him. And he's a great player, an all Big East caliber guy, he and Pierre Brooks, but without really having a legit point guard. And then
full snag with the Zoom meeting recording, and so we lost audio and visual while um, Tristan Freeman was discussing Butler. And at that point in the video, he had slated Butler ninth and was discussing the new people they were bringing in and so forth. Uh, there wasn't much to add to Butler after that, and to move on briefly, number 9 being Georgetown, or correction, number Butler is number 9, number 10 Georgetown, number 11 of course being DePaul. Cooley bringing in a multitude of new players, some proven, some not, a couple of good recruits and whatnot. But the or consensus, uh, Tristan's opinion was that uh, it would be surprising if we saw a major breakthrough by Georgetown this season, and the same with DePaul, seeing as how new coach Chris Holtzman, formerly of Ohio State, is now the DePaul um, new head coach, and uh, the old player crew of players left Wholesale, and Holtzman uh, brought in a whole new team of new players, predominantly off of the um, although there are a couple of players left, but brought in a slew of new players off the transfer portal for DePaul. So Georgetown 10, DePaul 11, pretty much status quo for the last couple of years, well, 3 or 4 years for that matter. But so allow me to apologize again for the technical difficulties in losing the feed with Tristan on the Zoom call. And we thank you for stopping by, dropping in on the Blue Notes Big East preview show. And we appreciate your patronage and watching. And hopefully, it was an informative discussion, and you got a good you got a good deal of information and entertainment from the presentation. Thank you again. Thank you very much. Um, ciao.